The Betfair starting price is seen by some punters to be a little bit complicated and they're unsure because they're not sure what price they're going to get. So in this video, I'm going to look at how to use it, why you should be using it, and how can it be predicted, and how are the professionals using the Betfair starting price. Now, everything in this video is information that I've collected from personal experience or from looking at the documentation which Betfair has provided, or from talking to others who do use it. And I'm talking about punters like myself who put millions and millions of dollars through the Betfair starting price each week. Let's get to it. So today I'm going to look at the Betfair starting price. What is it? How does it work and how is it calculated? Why is it important? And most importantly for most people, how are professional racing punters actually using it, whether they bet or trade? So what is the Betfair starting price? And I'm guessing if you've clicked on this video, you already know, but the Betfair starting price is essentially the price that is calculated by balancing out all of the bets on Betfair when a market is suspended and starts. So this could be in racing, the start of a race, or in a sport, it's the start of a game. So it's before things go in play. Now, important things that you need to realize is the Betfair starting price is not known until the event starts. So you can't use the Betfair starting price figures if you're testing out something unless you're using the market on close, and then you have to take into account how you affect that price. And you can definitely not use it in any of your predictions if you're using machine learning or using it as a filter for what you're betting on. It will change. You do not know what it is until after you've placed your bet or lay. So another important thing is that when you actually do a bet or lay, you cannot cancel that BSP bet. Once it's in, and you need to live with it until the event finishes. Now, it is available on most racing markets around the world, and it is generally available on thoroughbreds, harness, and greyhound races, but it is also available on some sporting events. So previously it's been on soccer, in the last year it's been on AFL, and you might find the Betfair experiments with it on other sporting arrangements. So why is the Betfair starting price important? Now, the Betfair starting price does pay really well compared to a traditional tote, such as the TAB price. So Betfair's done some analysis on this, and we're looking at almost 100,000 races. And overall, it's provided about a 12.3% value over the market of best tote. Now, it's going to differ, and this is important. You will find that where the better prices are generally once you're getting into the long shots, and those that are definitely above $10. For the shorter priced ones, sometimes you will find that the BSP is less than the best tote, or will be around the best tote. It's once you get to those really, really high priced tote, such as the 100 to 1s, the 50 to 1s, that you're going to find on Betfair. They're more like 800 to 1, 1,000 to 1. And that is where a lot of the value comes in. It's especially important if your selections are above that $10 range. Now, it does vary, obviously. In here you can see in the last week it was 20% almost, and the last month it was almost 14%. It does depend on what's the money that's flowing into the market and how that is affecting the price, either pushing it up or down. So it is a good thing to look at as a starting point if you want to get a bet on, rather than using the TAB. Now, the BSP is very accurate, and this is why it is such an important metric to understand. So when we look at it at an aggregate, basically we're looking at it based on the percentage chance that you convert the price into a chance of that horse winning. A $2 horse should win 50% of the time. A $3 horse should win about 33% of the time. A $10 horse should win about 10% of the time. Now, if you look at this, we're looking at over 3 million runners in over 381,000 races. And if we look at all those price points and plot how those horses went at those prices versus what the BSP said should happen, you can see it is almost a straight line directly up. Now, right at the edges is where it tends to fluctuate a little bit. So you can see as we get above 80% there to 100%, the line's not quite as straight, but that's because there's a lot less horses that fall in an 80 to 100% chance. And so it will get a little bit of a wiggle in there as there's not as many selections. But you can see generally the BSP is a very good predictor of how a horse will run based on its price. Now, why do traders and people want to use the Betfair Starting Price? So the most important thing for a trader is that it can be used as a safety catch in case either the trader loses connection or there's an outage at Betfair that has happened unexpectedly. So you can essentially hedge out your trades using the BSP when you're still in a trade, and then once you've removed that trade, you can get out of the BSP. Now, you'll remember that I said that BSP can't be cancelled. You can put a limit on the price that you're willing to accept, and if you set that limit very high or very low, you can effectively get out and cancel that trade. So if I set it at 1,000 to 1 and I'm willing to back anything at 1,000 to 1 and above, it's not going to likely get triggered unless I'm betting on a long shot that is 1,000. But if I had it set at taking a back bet of $1 or higher while I'm in the trade, it would essentially take the bet, and then once I've closed out the trade, I could reset those odds to 1,000, effectively cancelling out that bet. If you're trading around the favourites, which are generally $2, $3, $4, setting the odds up to 1,000, it's definitely not going to get triggered. And even if it did get triggered, the amazing value that you would get on it would be worth it. Now, the reason I use BSP, I am not a trader, is that it allows me to get significant volumes on, and I can get a lot of money matched at BSP, which I cannot get matched on the exchange at a fairly good price. This is because when the BSP gets assigned, it's looking at the money which is in the exchange as well as the money that is in the SP market. So it's a lot easier to get that value and the volume in. And if you're using methods that definitely want to understand what that price is, as close a prediction as possible to see if you have value, you want to be getting on your bets as late as possible and getting on the exchange and then going to the BSP allows you to get that significant volume on very late in the market. Now, another good example of where BSP is important is it allows you to have a standard price that you can use to compare your models and systems or other tipsters or ratings that you have access to and see how they actually perform when they're using their set of odds that they may have achieved, which may be unrealistic in some situations. The BSP is a fairly standard, generic, open set of odds that anyone could have got at the time. And so it gives you a reference point that matches across everything. Now, the BSP also allows you to compare your own models and systems so that you can determine if you're trying to get bets on it in the odds in the exchange, you can compare that to BSP because if you achieved higher odds in the exchange than what the final BSP price is, you've essentially got value. Remember the chart that we had, it showed that the BSP was a very good predictor of a horse's chances. Now, if you compare to the BSP and say you got $10 and the BSP was $8, well, you've got $2 of value there in the price that you took. And over time, if you can keep your odds above the BSP, you're going to be a long-term winner. Now, saying that, if you are laying, you want your odds to be less than the BSP. And that will mean you've got some value in laying and you will be a long-term winner. And this is why the BSP is so important to so many people. There are 4 different types of bets that we need to understand when it comes to betting on Betfair Starting Price. Now, one of those is the market on close, also known as the take SP. There is the limit SP, and there is an unmatched exchange bet, again where you take the SP, and an exchange bet where you're persisting your bet into the in-play market. So if we look at each of those and how we would take those bets, so the market on close bets are very simple to take. So if you look here, I am placing a bet on Master Showman for $5, and I'm taking whatever price the Betfair Starting Price is. I haven't set any odds for it. So if it came in at $15, that's what I'd get. If it came in at $20, that's what I'd get. This is a really easy way to use it, and it just gets you the Betfair Starting Price. Now, if you're using models and ratings, or you've got some idea on how to set a price, what you're going to likely want to do is set the minimum odds or the maximum odds if you're laying when you place a limit on close SP bet. Now, a limit on close allows you to set the SP odds. So if you look up the top in the right hand side there, I've checked that set SP odds limit, and that allows me to put in the odds that I want. So here I've set it at 17.5, and again I've set the stake at $5, and it'll show me my possible profit. Now, the interesting thing about limit on close is it will not always be matched. The Betfair SP price needs to be at or above those odds for backing, or at and below those odds for laying. So think of this as the minimum price that you want to take. But now, even if I do set 17.5 as my odds, it doesn't mean if the Betfair price is 17.5 that I will be matched. I will only be matched if there's enough money there. Whereas in the last one, the market on close, it will push the price around. So it would push the price up or down. So if I was betting, it would push the price down to maybe $16.90 instead of $17.50, for example. It's going to ensure you get your bet on. But limit on close, you may not get your bet on, but you are making sure that you get value for your bets. You're setting the price that you are willing to take. So at this point, you should think that you have some value in what you're betting. You're kind of giving up the bet based on whether or not it is value. And it is a great way, if you're just starting to bet, looking at pricing horses so that you understand what is value for a horse and what's not. Whether a horse wins or loses isn't important. It's whether or not you get a long-term value in those odds that you got about the horse. Now, exchange bets are interesting. So a lot of people just deal with exchange bets and not SP. So in this example, you can set a stake and some odds around a horse. Now in this example, I've put odds of 50 because I didn't want it to actually be matched. But here for Insurrection, you could try to get odds in the market of say $3.70, $3.80, $4. And as the price moves around, it may hit those $4. But if it doesn't get matched and you do want to get the bet on, regardless of what the odds are, you can say to take SP. Now, if you beat the SP majority of the time, this is great. You're going to have some value there. It will mean that occasionally going to take odds of less than $3.40. if the market keeps moving down, for instance, and went to $3. You're going to take whatever is the Betfair SP price if you haven't got matched up until that point. Now, if you get partially matched, that means, say you've put on a $50 bet and $49.50 gets matched, there'll be 50 cents left over. The minimum for BSP is $1 for backing and $30 for laying. If you are less than that $1, it's not going to get matched. So just keep that in mind. So partial matches can mean that all of your stake will not get matched in this market. Now, the other thing you can do is say keep. Now, keep means don't take the SP, just let it go to in play and I'll see if I get matched in play. Obviously, in play prices move around quite quickly and do go up and down quite a lot. So some people prefer to just see if they can get the price that they want in play. And that's a valid option. It just means skipping the Betfair SP market. Now, saying that, even though it says persist, you may still get matched at the Betfair SP if it meets your odds for the Betfair SP. Does it matter what type of Betfair starting price bets you take, whether it's a market on close or a limit on close, which is the limit SP, or an exchange bet that then goes to take the SP? In theory, no. And I will say in theory, no, and usually doesn't. But based on testing, there is a bit of an order to which bets get matched first. Now, this is based on my experience. I don't have official ordering by Betfair or anything like that. They're fairly tight on giving out this sort of information, but there is a bit of an order in that market on closed will get matched over the limit on close or limit SP, and they will get matched over the exchange bets. So this will usually be a problem at the extremes. We're talking $101 or $1,000, so different extremes of the markets. So the market on close at 1,000 to 1 bets will get taken first over the limit and the unmatched exchange bets. It's interesting because generally it doesn't matter. Now, in most of the markets, it's not going to fall directly onto a figure, and the market on close and limit SP will generally be matched, and the limit SP may be partially matched because there's not enough money there. But it's probably not something you need to worry about too much, and it's not going to affect how much you get matched unless you're doing very large volumes. And then it may be 1% or 2% that doesn't get traded for that particular reason. So how is the Betfair starting price calculated? It's calculated very simply. It just attempts to find the middle ground where the money backing and the money laying is equal so that they can get the highest volume of money matched, therefore making the most commissions for Betfair and getting most of the bets and lays on for the punters. But how is this done? I'm going to go through that and try to keep it as simple as possible so people understand it. There are two estimates of the Betfair starting price that you can show in the Betfair exchange. There is the near price and the far price. Now, the near price will include all of the exchange bets and is a much better indicator of what the Betfair starting price is likely to be. The far price is only taking into account bets that have been placed with the market on close. And it is only starting price bets, and these will vary wildly from what the Betfair starting price is, because the Betfair starting price never only takes into account the SP bets, it also takes into account the exchange bets. Now, the reason they show both is while the FAR price isn't useful for predicting what the starting price will be, it is useful for explaining how the starting price is calculated. Here is an example of how we take some information with market on close bets and determine a Betfair starting price. So in this example, I'm assuming it's market on close, so they don't care what price they get. That's not applicable in this case. We have backers who have placed the equivalent of $10 bets, and we have layers who have placed the equivalent liability of $100 bets. So when you think the backers have got $10 in there and the layers have put into the pool $100 that can be split with the backers. So in the pool total, there's 110 because you've got the $10 that the backers put in and you've got the $100 that the layers put in. So we add those together, that's the entire pool. So the pool's $110. Now, if we need to divide that by the money that the backers can win to find what the odds are. So in this case, it was $10. So we go 110 divided by 10, and we get a Betfair starting price of $11, which is fairly easy. So if the selection wins, the backers will win the 100 divided by 10, which equals the $10 profit. So they've bet $1, they get 11 back. That means their profit was $10. That would wipe out the entire liability of the layers and return the stake back to the people who backed the selection. Now, if the selection loses, the layers will win the $10. Now, they've put in $100, so they're really only winning 10 cents per dollar staked, which isn't much, but that's what layers do. They provide the liquidity in there for the backers. So this gets interesting now when we start to play around with the figures. What happens if we add another $10 to the backers? So now there's someone else in the market and they want to bet $10 as well. And the layers, no one else has come in, they're still at $100. So now there's $20 to back the selection. Now you remember in the last one, the Betfair starting price was $11. In this case, we again have to add what the backers had, which is now 10 plus 10, which is 20, and the layers liability, which is 100, so that gives us 120. But we need to divide this by the $20 that the backers have put in. So when we look at 120 divided by 20, we get a Betfair starting price of $6. So if the selection wins, the backers will now win $5 in profit, which is a 50% decline on what they were winning before. And if the selection loses, the layers will win 20 cents per dollar staked, which is a 100% increase on their side. You can see the impact here of what only $10 does in this small market. Putting in money on the backing side can have a considerable effect on the BSP price when we look at the FAR SP price. Now let's assume that we didn't get that $10 on the backers side, but they actually put it on the layers side. So here we can do a bit of a comparison. So we've got the $10 from the backers, but now we've got $110 for the layers in liability. So again, we have $120 as the total pool, 10 plus 10 plus 100. And now we divide that by the backers, which is 10. And now we get a BSP of $12. So it's gone from $11 to $12. It's only moved one. But remember when the $10 was on the other side? It moved from $11 all the way down to $6. A massive difference. So here, if the selection wins, the backers will now win $11 profit instead of $10 profit. And if the selection loses, the layers will only lose 9 cents per dollar staked. So they've gone down 1 cent per dollar staked, which is about 10%, and the backers have gone up about 10%. You can see here that putting $10 on the lay side has far less effect on the market than putting $10 on the backing side. Now, to get the same return though, you need to generally put a lot more money on the laying side, and that is where it tends to balance out a bit more. So people aren't going to lay $10. The minimum is $30 compared to the minimum of backing, which is $1 effectively these days. So think about that. It's 30 times difference. That is a huge difference. So layers are putting in hundreds, if not thousands of dollars when they lay something to win just a few cents or dollars, compared to the backers, which are putting in minimal money to win a larger percentage gain. So how is it calculated when there are unmatched exchange bets? This is where it starts to get a little bit more complicated and most people get lost. I've tried to keep this simple with just 4 lines on my table. So if we look at the backers, there's 2 sets of backers here. There are those with the market on close who have set their minimum price at $1.01. There are backers at a minimum price of $6, which is the 3rd line there, and they're trying to bet $10. Now, if we look at the other 2 lines on there, we've got some layers who have put in $10 worth of liability at a maximum price of $5, and we have layers who have put in a liability of $100 with a maximum price of $1,000, which is the maximum price on Betfair. I've tried to keep this simple with only 4 lines. It should make it easier to understand, and we can see how the unmatched exchange bets, when a market goes essentially for starting price reconciliation, and how these unmatched exchange bets will affect the starting price. All the algorithm is doing is trying to balance the money so that it gets the same on each side of the equation. So it's trying to find a price where in that set of 4 rows that I've got there, the most money can be matched. Sounds simple. I know it's not simple. There's a lot more going on, but if you think about it high level, this is what it's trying to do. So I'm going to work through this line by line to explain what happens with the price. Let's assume that we're looking at just the FAR SP price, which we did before. So we know in this case that we had $10 backing and we had $100 liability. Fairly simple. We're just assuming this is going to be the FAR price without the exchange bets. So if we look at it, the BSP price, as we calculated before for FAR SP, is $11. The 100 plus the 10 make the pool, and then we divide it by the backers, which is $10, therefore giving us a BSP price of $11. But if you were in the market as one of those backers who wanted $6, you're going to be very upset that the Betfair starting price was $11 and all you were asking for was $6, and the layers are going to be a little bit upset that there was money there at $6 that they could have laid at. So what the exchange tries to do in its calculation is set the starting price where it can match the most money. So in this instance, $11 is much higher than the $6 which is in the market. So what it's going to start to do is move up the backing side and try to match more and more money until it essentially becomes level. So in this instance, we'd include the extra backers because $11 was higher than anything in that price chart where we had fixed prices on the exchange. And we're going to try to find the equilibrium. Now, again, simplified example, it gets much more complicated in the exchange, but this shows what is happening. The BSP price here, if we include the backers, we've now got $20 on the backside because we've gone all the way up to the $6 range. and we've got a liability of 100. So our total pool is now 120, and if we divide that by the $20 on the backing side, we'd see we'd get odds of $6. Now that lined up quite nicely because it's an example. Obviously on the exchange, it's not quite that easy, but this shows how it's moved and included more backing prices to a point where the money could be matched. So in this case, the BSP price is $6. Everyone's happy. They got the prices they wanted, which was the maximum price they could get for the backers, and the layers are happy because they've got all their money matched. Now, in this case where we just went through, the layers at $5 did not get matched because the price where we matched up was $6, and that's because we started from 11 and had to bring it back down. So the equilibrium was around $6. So let's do the laying side, but we need to adjust the figures so that we get a price where we need to move the price up. So I've made an assumption. In this case, you can see that I've changed the laying liability that is at 1,000 to only 30 instead of 100. This makes the calculation on the laying side a bit easier for us to understand, and we can see how that equilibrium price gets moved. Let's work out the BSP price again. So now that we've only got 30 in there, let's do the FAR SP price. In this case, we have $10 on the backing side and $30 on the laying side. Our pool is only $40 in this case. You divide that by the backers, which was 10, and we get a BSP price of $4. Now, $4 is obviously unfair to the layers at $5, who would have taken those bets at $4 had they been able to. So the BSP price needs to include those layers who were unfairly affected. So because we had a price of $4, we're going to have to move that BSP price up a little bit. So we're going to include laying bets until we find an equilibrium again. So in this case, let's include those layers that are at $5. So again, we've got the $10 on the back side, and now we've got 30 and 10 on the laying side. So 40 plus 10 is 50. So $50 divided by the $10 on the back side means a BSP price of $5. So now we've lined up again the backers and the layers at a price point where the most money has been matched on both the back side and the lay side. So it all depends on where that FAR SP figure starts, and then it starts to use the exchange to move it closer. So any unmatched exchange bets suddenly start getting moved into the Betfair SP and are getting matched. So in this case, the backers who wanted $6 did not get matched because by the time we got to the price of $5, that was where the equilibrium was, and we didn't need to continue. So just remember, if the FAR SP price is higher than what's in the market's going to bring it back down to where it needs to be. If it's lower than what's in the market's going to be brought in to bring it back up to where it needs to be. It's all about just finding that middle point. This is a simplified example. The algorithm just keeps stepping through the prices till it finds the equilibrium. Now, this was 4 levels. Think in the market, there's a lot more levels and it's got a lot more room that it can move. And with the market on close stuff, it can actually fall in between certain prices. So don't get too stressed about how it works, just high level. Hopefully this explains how the matching occurs. Predicting winners using the Betfair SP is quite an interesting idea, and as we said earlier, there's a lot of people have looked at how the Betfair starting price is compared to how the selections run, and it is one of the most accurate prices you can use, which makes it very hard to beat but if you can beat it and you can predict it, then you're going to be a step ahead of the rest of the market. Now, there's been quite a few predictions and ways to predict the Betfair starting price, but there's a good one that was done in the Betfair Data Scientists GitHub, which is free, and I've put the link down there as the source. This is where we can see that if you took the price 120 seconds, 90 seconds, 60 seconds, 30 seconds at market time, and you looked at BSP and did a log loss, which is essentially predicting how far the price at that time is off the chances of the horse winning, you'll see that BSP has the best result. A lower log loss means a better result. So as the market gets closer and closer to the time of the jump or the start of the match, the BSP and the prices tend to get more and more efficient as more money comes into the market, settling on a price that is very accurate. And this is just the crowd being the best predictor. So BSP takes into account all of the crowd up to that point, because the price is essentially moving around. BSP is going to be very close to that final price at the start time of the market. And then it's going to have extra money put in that just throws that price slightly off into a better price to predict the outcome. So there's very little there, but that little bit can be the difference between winning and losing in the long term. So here you can see that if we could actually predict the BSP when we are 120 seconds off, we would do quite well, because we could actually trade the BSP in that case. If we can predict where it's going to be, we'll know if the odds that are on the exchange are value, or they're not value, and therefore we should be either laying or backing depending on which side the value sits. So here is the BSP log loss, and just as a chart, you can see very simply that the price gets much, much better as we get closer. Now, it is the best predictor. This is reproducible. All of the code is in that site. It's available for anyone to use. You can use it, see what happens, come up with similar figures and prove it to yourself. You don't have to take my word for it. So as I said, if we know that the BSP is the best predictor, then we should predict the BSP, right? So how hard is it to predict the BSP? So again, same repository. They've done an analysis here of how to find and predict the BSP. So if we use the far price, you can see that is a terrible indicator. But if we start looking at the near price or the lay price or the back price, we start getting a lot closer. Now, if you took the middle, which is the ladder midpoint, which is the point between the best offer price, back price, and the best lay price, that gets even closer. But if you take the geometric midpoint, you're going to do even slightly better. And in my own analysis, I have found that the geometric midpoint is also the best way to predict what the BSP will be. If you know what the BSP is going to be, you know whether to take a certain price on the exchange or whether you should just take the BSP because it may be slightly higher or lower, depending on what you are doing. Now, the markets don't always perform as expected, and sometimes you'll have issues in the market, and these are unavoidable. So Betfair has ways of reconciling the SP, just in case something goes wrong, such as an outage on the exchange unexpectedly, or someone's hit the button too early to reconcile SP. So I'm going to go through a few statements from Betfair that you can find on their site. and try to explain it as best I can, but I may just need to read some of these and then explain it to give you the correct interpretation as I see it. So if for whatever reason the site becomes unavailable when an event starts, Betfair will determine the SP using the available information. And what they do say is, for the avoidance of doubt, the information is not limited to just the betting activity on the market. So that means that they may look at markets elsewhere, such as the totes and bookies, and come up with a SP price that is equivalent. Now, it's very unlikely that this needs to be done, but they've put that in there just as a condition so that people do know that if something goes wrong, they're not going to set a price that is really out of whack with where it would have been had the market been okay. So the Betfair personnel involved in determining the SP will have no undeclared personal or other interest in the SP in question. So they're definitely saying right here that anyone setting the SP price when there has been problems will not have any way a monetary gain by setting that price. They're not involved in that market. Now, in horse racing, especially harness, there is a chance that someone will hit the button for the SP reconciliation process to occur, and it will be premature because we may have a false start. So if the horse race has been turned in play or the harness race, Betfair is going to try to reverse the reconciliation. This sometimes gets a bit weird because your SP bets will disappear on the exchange and you'll think they're not there, but they're still there. You just need to understand a false start's happened, your bets are still there, they're just not showing. And when the reconciliation process is taken into account again, those bets will eventually be matched again. Now, generally, they can just change it back and then turn it back on in a 30 seconds, a minute, however long it takes to get back to the start of the race. That will normally happen, but there are cases where it's not possible. They're very rare, and in this case, the SP will be based on the initial reconciliation, and this is generally in cases where it's happened fairly quickly. We're talking seconds or very short period of time. And the SP is still not going to be materially affected based on that very short period. Now, if the reconciliation process is undertaken later than scheduled, so someone forgot to press the button when it was meant to go in play, Betfair is going to actually have a look at what has happened between the time of when the race started to when the button was pressed to determine what to actually do. So generally, if it's a very long time, they're going to determine that all SP bets after the scheduled start are voided, and this just ensures that no one gets an unfair advantage by being able to watch, say, most of the race and then put on an SP bet. Now, if it's only a few seconds and there's no real impact to what would have happened to the price, because not much extra SP dollars have been bet in that period, then the bets will generally stand. But it all comes down to what is the impact on the SP price and has people gained an advantage. Non-runners and Betfair SP is quite interesting. So this generally is around late scratchings that have occurred very late in the market and can be due to things like the barriers not opening for a horse. Now, I've taken the example that Betfair puts on their website around this, and I'm going to try to explain it in the best way I can. So in this example that they have here, if a horse that was $2, which essentially has a reduction factor of 50%, becomes a non-runner, then what we're going to have to do is change the price of the horse, and we're going to have to change the liability around that horse. So the price is fairly easy. It's going to change by the 50% reduction factor. So a $5 horse will go to $2.50. Nice and simple, just apply the reduction factor, not a problem. But now when it comes to what happens to the liability for the layers, that changes as well, because it needs to be taken into account to still keep that equilibrium which I spoke about before. So what it does in this case is they essentially take the reduction factor and divide that by the market, which is 100%, minus what was in that horse's chances, which was 20%, and come up with the reduction factor that needs to occur to the liability, which in this example is 37.5%. So the calculation's there, you can see all the numbers in their explanation, and you can work through that. So just keep in mind the reduction factor is only going to have the liability and odds changed if it is greater than 2.5% or higher. So if it's a long shot, generally they won't change anything. So the last explanation was about the win markets. Place markets work slightly differently. Of course, because we need multiple ways to do this just to keep it complex. So in this case, the liability is reduced by the reduction factor of the removed runner. So if you had a 50% reduction, the liability would be reduced by 50%. So it's a little bit different. It's calculated slightly different. This is because there's more chances of winning in a place market than there is in a win market. And it's going to have a slightly different outcome when there are late scratchings. Now, the odds will also obviously be reduced by the reduction amount. And if we have a look here, if you had limit odds on, those odds for your limit odds would also be reduced by the reduction factor. Keep in mind, SP lay bets are never cancelled. SP back bets are never cancelled when there is a non-runner, apart from if it is on that non-runner. So this has been a very long video, so I'm going to talk about a few ways on how you can use the Betfair SP to your advantage as a punter. Now, it's going to depend on your approach, but the very big advantage that you're going to have is if you know the Betfair starting price is accurate as a guide to the horse's chances, then you can determine if the odds that you are getting have value. So if you're backing, you want the odds to be higher. If you're laying, you want the odds to be lower. But comparing to that, you know if you have value. Secondly, if you can predict the Betfair SP, you can start to trade before it gets to reconciliation and then trade out with the Betfair SP, as well as you know the prices are going to be moving in that direction. Predicting it is not easy, but there is a lot of money to be made predicting the Betfair SP and trading in those last few minutes. Now, the biggest advantage I have when it comes to the Betfair starting price is that I can get on sizable trades. So if you have a model that can beat the Betfair SP, which is very hard to do, it allows you to trade when the Betfair starting price is in your favor and showing value. So while overall this Betfair starting price is a good indicator, in each market it is still inefficient. So it can be used to get millions upon millions of dollars on each year in the Betfair starting price. whereas you will not get as much of this money traded in the exchange that you want to keep on unless it's happening all in the last few minutes, which is when I tend to put most of my bets on. So this is kind of where you want to try to get to. If you can beat the Betfair SP, you definitely have values and you have a model that is very good. So I'll leave it there, and remember to always enjoy your betting and only bet what you can afford. And I hope that you've got a model which is making money and long term you're finding value. Thanks for watching the video.